Ian Mason, 36, and I just watched my own father try to give away my property to my brother as a wedding gift in front of 200 people. Before I tell you about the night my brother spent his honeymoon in a holding cell, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The gravel cracked under the tires of my Rolls-Royce Ghost as I pulled up to the valet stand of the Grand Hotel. It was a humid Saturday in late June, the kind of heat that makes a tuxedo feel like a straight jacket. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror.
It's a wedding, Dad, I said. Usually is. More than that, Mom whispered, leaning in. We're finally setting things right. We're finally making sure everyone gets what they deserve. A chill went down my spine. That phrase, what they deserve. In my family, that usually meant taking from me to give to Caleb. I found my seat at table 2. Table 1 was for the bridal party and parents. I was relegated to the extended family and business associates table, despite paying for the open bar. Next to me sat Uncle Christian, my mother's brother. He was the only one in the family who had made his own money, in logistics, and the only one who didn't treat me like a walking ATM. You look like you're waiting for a bomb to go off, Christian said, taking a sip of his bourbon. Just a feeling, I said. Dad asked for my gate code last week. Said he wanted to drop off a gift for me. I didn't give it to him. Christian frowned. Keep your guard up, kid. The reception kicked off. Speeches were made. Tears were shed. Caleb gave a speech about how lucky he was to find a woman who understood his potential. I almost laughed. Caleb's potential had been the family project for 20 years, and it had yielded zero return on investment. Then the music cut out. The lights dimmed, leaving a spotlight on the center of the dance floor. My father, Robert, walked to the microphone. He looked meaningful. He looked dangerous. Friends, family? Dad boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. We are so proud of Caleb and Layla today, but a new marriage needs a strong foundation. Literally. He reached into his jacket pocket. My heart stopped. I saw the glint of metal. Caleb has always been the heart of this family, Dad continued, his voice thick with emotion. And Mason has been blessed with so much financial success. So, your mother and I decided it was time to balance the scales. We wanted to give you a start worthy of your status. He held up a set of keys. I recognized the keychain. It was a silver lion head. It was the spare key to my lake house. The house I had spent 5 years restoring. The house that was my sanctuary. Here are the keys to your new home, son, Dad shouted. Welcome to the Lakeview estate. The room erupted. Cheers. Applause. Caleb's jaw dropped. Then he let out a whoop of victory, pumping his fist in the air. Layla covered her mouth, feigning shock, but her eyes were gleaming with triumph. Mom said it. Caleb yelled over the applause. She said you guys would pull through. I didn't think. I moved. My legs carried me to the stage before my brain could process the consequences. I didn't run. I walked with the steady, terrifying purpose of a man watching his life being looted. I stepped up onto the platform just as Caleb reached for the keys. I intercepted Dad's hand. I didn't grab the keys. I grabbed the microphone stand. Excuse me, I said. The feedback squealed. The room didn't quiet down immediately. People thought it was part of the skit, part of the brotherly love. Actually, I boomed, my voice cutting through the noise. That house is in my name, and I just changed the locks. The silence that followed was violent. It hit the room like a physical wave. The clapping died out instantly. The cheers strangled in people's throats. Dad stared at me, his eyes bulging. Mason, sit down. You're drunk. I'm stone sober, Dad, I said, turning to face the crowd. I saw the confusion on their faces. Let me be clear. My parents do not own the Lakeview estate. I bought it in 2019. I paid for the renovation. I pay the taxes. My name, and only my name, is on the deed. I turned to Caleb. He was still holding his hand out, but now he looked like a child whose ice cream had just fallen in the dirt. Those keys, I pointed to the silver lion head in Dad's hand, are to the old locks. I had a locksmith out there at 8 a.m. this morning. Try to use them, and you'll be standing on the porch all night. But Mom said it was ours. Caleb stammered, his voice projecting over the silent room. He looked at Mom. You said Mason agreed. You said it was the wedding gift. Mom stood up at table 1, knocking over her champagne flute. Mason, how dare you? This is your brother's wedding. You have plenty of money. You don't need that big house all to yourself. It's not about need, Mom. I said into the mic, it's about theft. You can't give away what you don't own. It's family property. Dad roared, abandoning the microphone to shout at me directly. We are your parents. We decide how the assets are distributed. It's not an asset, I said coldly. It's my home. And if anyone, I looked at Caleb, then at Layla, then at my parents. If anyone tries to set foot on my property tonight, security is waiting. And they are armed. I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage floor with a heavy thud. I turned and walked off the stage. The walk back to the exit felt miles long. I could feel the eyes of every guest burning into my back. I could hear Layla starting to scream, a high-pitched, shattering sound. You ruined everything, she shrieked. You selfish bastard. I didn't stop. I walked past Uncle Christian. He raised his glass to me, a solemn nod of respect. I pushed through the double doors, out into the humid night air. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally, after 36 years, saying no in a language they couldn't ignore. But as I waited for the valet to bring my car, I knew this wasn't over. My father's ego had just been publicly executed. He wouldn't let that stand. I slid into the driver's seat of the Rolls-Royce, the leather cool against my back. I didn't turn the engine on immediately. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, breathing in the silence. The chaos inside the hotel was muted now, just a dull roar behind thick glass. To understand why I just humiliated my family in front of everyone they knew, you have to understand the history of the golden child. Caleb was the firstborn, the miracle baby, the one who could do no wrong. I was Mason, the spare, the backup plan. Growing up, if Caleb broke a toy, it was an accident. If I broke a toy, I was clumsy. If Caleb needed a car, my parents co-signed. When I needed money for college, I was told it would build character to work my way through. And I did. I built a lot of character. I also built a real estate portfolio. I bought the Lakeview house 5 years ago. Back then, it was a rotting Victorian shell on a prime piece of land. The roof was caving in. The foundation was cracked. It was a disaster. You're wasting your money, Dad had told me when I showed him the listing. Why don't you invest in Caleb's crypto startup? Help the family. I ignored him. For 2 years, I spent every weekend at that house. I learned to lay tile. I learned to route electrical wiring. I scraped century-old wallpaper off the walls until my fingers bled. I poured my sweat, my salary, and my soul into that place. It wasn't just a house. It was the one thing in my life that Caleb hadn't touched, hadn't tainted. 2 years ago, when Caleb lost his job again, I made the mistake of letting him stay in the guest cottage for a few weeks. A few weeks turned into 3 months. He smoked inside, burned cigarette holes in the new carpet I had just installed. He threw parties while I was away on business. When I asked him to leave, Mom called me crying, saying I was throwing my own flesh and blood onto the street. I had to threaten to call the sheriff then, too. That was the first time I saw real hatred in my brother's eyes. Then came Layla. Layla wasn't just a fiancée. She was a campaign manager. She saw Caleb's potential through the lens of my parents' enabling. She saw the Lakeview house during a Thanksgiving dinner I hosted and made a comment I never forgot. This place is too big for a bachelor. It needs a family to make it a home. I should have seen the setup coming. Last week, Mom called me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something expensive. Mason, honey, she said, we need to talk about the wedding gift. I already wrote a check for the venue, Mom, I said. And the flowers. That's $50,000. That's the gift. Well, yes. She dismissed it. But that's for the party. We're talking about a gift for life. Caleb and Layla need a start. They love your house, Mason. I stopped typing on my laptop. They love my house? That's nice. They can buy one down the street. Don't be difficult, Mom snapped. You know Caleb can't get a mortgage right now. His credit is recovering. You have so much. You're always traveling for work. You hardly use it. We decided it would be a beautiful gesture if you transferred the deed to them. As a wedding present. I actually laughed. Transfer the deed? You want me to give them a $2 million property? Are you insane? It's family property, she yelled. Everything we have is for the family. No, I said. Everything you have is for Caleb. Everything I have is mine. The answer is no. Tell Dad the answer is no. And if you ask again, I'm not coming to the wedding. You wouldn't dare embarrassing us, she hissed. We promised Layla's parents that the couple would be taken care of. Not my problem, I said, and hung up. I thought that was the end of it. I thought my no meant no. I was naive. I underestimated their entitlement. They truly believed that if they announced it publicly, if they put me on the spot in front of 200 witnesses, I would be too ashamed to refuse. They banked on my silence. They banked on the idea that I would swallow the loss to save face. They forgot that I didn't build my business by being a doormat. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to the present. A text from Gabriel, my lawyer and best friend since college. Gabriel, just saw the live stream from your cousin. Holy hell. Are you safe? Me leaving now. I'm heading to the house. Security is in place. Gabriel, 2 guards from Titan Security are posted at the gate. I'm meeting you there. I have the paperwork ready. This is going to get ugly, Mason. I put the car in drive. The engine purred, a low, powerful growl. I pulled out of the hotel driveway, checking my mirrors. No one was following me yet, but I knew they would come. Caleb had keys in his hand. Useless keys, yes, but to him they were a symbol of ownership. Layla had been promised a castle. Dad had been humiliated. They weren't going to go back to their rented apartment tonight. They were coming for my house. I pressed the accelerator. I needed to get there first. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. This was a siege. The drive to the lake was usually therapeutic. Tonight, it felt like a tactical insertion. I turned onto the private road leading to my estate. The tall iron gates were closed. Standing guard were 2 men in dark uniforms, arms crossed, looking very much like people you didn't want to mess with. Titan Security. Worth every penny. One of them stepped forward as I lowered my window. Mr. Rossi, the guard said. We're locked down. No unauthorized access. Good, I said. My family is coming. My parents, my brother, and his new wife. They are not to enter. Under any circumstances. Understood, sir. We have the guest list. Only Gabriel is cleared. I drove up the winding driveway. The house stood on the hill, illuminated by the landscape lighting I had installed myself. It looked majestic. The slate roof, the stone facade, the wraparound porch. It was my masterpiece. The idea of Layla painting these walls beige and Caleb smoking cigars in my library made my blood boil. I parked the Rolls in the garage and went inside. Gabriel was already there, sitting in my living room, a stack of files on the coffee table. He looked sharp, even at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. You really dropped the nuke, didn't you? Gabriel said, not looking up from a document. They left me no choice, Gabe. I poured myself a drink. Dad tried to hand him the keys, in front of everyone. I saw. Gabriel tapped his tablet. It's trending on local TikTok. Groom humiliated by rich brother. The comments are mixed. Half think you're a hero, half think you're the devil. Let them talk. I took a sip. Are we legally covered? Ironclad, Gabriel said. Deed is in your name. No trusts, no cosigners. I pulled the security footage from the gate just now. We have clear signage for private property. If they cross that line, it's criminal trespassing. They'll cross it, I said. looking out the window down the long driveway. They think rules don't apply to them. 40 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. I walked to the wall panel near the kitchen. The camera feed showed a convoy of cars. My parents' Mercedes, Caleb's rented limousine, and a few other cars filled with what looked like Layla's relatives. They were still in their wedding clothes. It was grotesque. A wedding procession turned into an invasion force. I pressed the talk button. "Go home, Dad. Open this gate, Mason." Dad's voice cracked through the speaker. He sounded desperate, unhinged. "You have embarrassed us enough. Let your brother in. It's his wedding night." "It's my house," I said calmly. "Caleb has an apartment. Go there." "It's too small." Layla screamed from the background. I could see her on the camera, standing in her white dress, banging on the iron bars of the gate. "You promised. Your mother promised me this house. It's mine." "My mother lied to you, Layla," I said. "She promised you something she didn't have to give. Take it up with her." "Mason, please." Mom's voice now. She was crying. "Don't do this. We told everyone. We told the in-laws. We'll look like liars." "You are liars, Mom," I said. "You tried to steal my home." "We didn't steal it," Caleb shouted, stepping into the frame. He looked disheveled, his tie undone. "We're family. What's yours is ours. That's how it works." "That's how it worked when I was 12 and you stole my paper route money," I said. "That's not how it works when we're grown men. Leave. The guards have instructions to call the police if you don't clear the driveway in 5 minutes." "You wouldn't call the cops on your family," Caleb sneered. "You're a coward, Mason. You always were. You hide behind your money." "5 minutes, Caleb," I said and cut the feed. I turned to Gabriel. He was recording everything on his phone. "Did you hear that?" Gabriel asked. "They admitted they knew it was your house but felt entitled to it anyway. That's intent." "They're not leaving," I said. I watched the monitor. They were arguing with the security guards. Dad was pointing a finger in a guard's face. The guard didn't flinch. Then I saw Layla pull out her phone. She started recording herself, crying hysterically, pointing at the gate, then pointing at the house. "She's going to social media," Gabriel sighed. "The court of public opinion. This is going to get messy before it gets better." "Let them post," I said, feeling a cold resolve settle in my chest. "They're just documenting their own harassment." I watched as Layla's family started unloading suitcases from the limo. They were actually unloading luggage on the side of the road, as if they expected me to cave. "They really think I'm going to open the gate," I whispered. "They've spent 30 years training you to say yes," Gabriel said. "They can't process the update to your software." Suddenly, the intercom buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a voice. It was a loud, metallic clang. Someone had thrown a rock at the gate. "Open the damn gate," Caleb screamed. He was kicking the bars now. "It's my house. Mom signed the papers. It's my house." I looked at Gabriel. "Papers? What papers?" Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "That's what he said. Mom signed the papers." A terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. "Gabe, is it possible?" "If they forged a deed transfer," Gabriel said, his voice dropping an octave, "this isn't just a family dispute anymore. That's a felony. That's fraud." We stared at the screen. Outside, in the dark, my family was screaming, banging on the gates of the kingdom they thought they were owed. But if Gabriel was right, they hadn't just come to bully me. They had come to commit a crime. We didn't open the gate. Eventually, the yelling died down. The convoy of cars retreated, but they didn't go far. They parked down the road, likely plotting their next move. I sat in the library, the glow of my laptop screen the only light. Gabriel was monitoring the legal channels, checking for any emergency injunctions they might try to file. I was monitoring the internet, and it was brutal. Layla had gone live on Instagram. The video had thousands of views already. She was sitting in the back of the limo, mascara running down her face, looking like the tragic heroine of a soap opera. "He threw us out," she sobbed into the camera. On our wedding night, his own brother. We have nowhere to go. My parents are devastated. He's a monster. He has this huge mansion and he lives alone, and he can't even spare a room for his pregnant sister-in-law. Wait, pregnant? Gabe, I said. Layla is claiming she's pregnant. Gabriel looked up. Is she? First I'm hearing of it, I said. But the comments... Listen to this. I started reading them out loud. User_Stacy99. What a scumbag brother. Rich people are the worst. User_family first. How can someone do that to family? Karma will get him. User_Blessmum. Boycott his business. Who is this guy? My phone started blowing up. Texts from business partners. From Dave. Hey Mason. Seeing some weird stuff online. Everything good? From Sarah. Just got a DM asking if I work with the Wedding Crasher. We need to manage this PR, Mason. My reputation, which I had built for 15 years, was being dismantled in 15 minutes by a lie. We need to respond, I said, my thumb hovering over the post button. I need to tell the truth. Not yet, Gabriel said. If you engage in a mudslinging contest, you look just as dirty. We need a kill shot. We need indisputable proof. I have the audio, I remembered. The call with Mom last week. I record all my business calls automatically. She called me on my work line. I pulled up the file. Incoming call. Mom, June 20th. I played it for Gabriel. Mom's voice. We decided. It would be a beautiful gesture if you transferred the deed to them. It's family property. My voice. The answer is no. Tell Dad the answer is no. Gabriel nodded. That proves you refused. But it doesn't prove the fraud Caleb mentioned at the gate. The papers. Just then, a notification popped up on Facebook. It was a comment on Layla's video. User_Christian Logistics. I was at the wedding. I am Mason's uncle. Robert took the keys to Mason's house without permission. Mason refused to give the house a week ago. This is not an eviction. It's a prevented theft. Stop spreading lies, Layla. And you're not pregnant, you were drinking champagne all night. Boom, I whispered. Uncle Christian. The tide in the comments section hesitated. User_Watcher. Wait, the uncle says she was drinking? User_Truth Seeker. If he said no last week, why did the dad give the keys? That's psycho behavior. But the family wasn't done. My phone rang. It wasn't a text this time. It was Dad. I put it on speaker. Gabriel signaled me to record. What? I said. You are destroying this family, Dad hissed. He sounded sober now, or maybe just coldly furious. Layla is threatening to leave Caleb. She says if she doesn't get the house, the marriage is annulled. Do you hear me? You are ending your brother's marriage. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep, Dad. I said. You did. You bought her love with my assets. It doesn't matter, Dad shouted. Fix it. Sign the transfer. Just sign it, Mason. We can work out a payment plan later. I'll pay you back. I swear. With what money, Dad? I asked. You remortgaged your own house to pay for Caleb's last failed business. You're broke. Silence. Dead silence. How did you know that? Dad whispered. I ran a background check on Caleb before I hired security. I lied. I actually knew because Uncle Christian told me. I know everything. I know you're drowning. And you thought stealing my house was your lifeboat. You selfish ungrateful. Dad started cursing. I'm hanging up, I said. And Dad? If you guys come back to the gate, I'm pressing charges. I hung up. My hands were trembling again. Not from fear, but from the sheer tragedy of it. My father was willing to bankrupt himself, lie to his in-laws, and steal from his successful son, all to prop up the illusion that Caleb was a success. He's desperate, Gabriel said quietly, and desperate men do stupid things. They're parked down the road, I said. They aren't leaving. Layla gave Caleb an ultimatum. The house or the divorce. So Caleb has to produce a house tonight, Gabriel said. Or he loses the girl. We looked at each other. We both knew what was coming. Caleb wasn't smart enough to come up with a plan B. He only had plan A, force his way in. I checked the cameras. The Titan security guards were doing a shift change. One car was leaving, another arriving. There was a 2-minute window where the gate was less monitored. Look, I pointed at the screen. In the graininess of the night vision camera, a figure was moving through the woods next to the driveway. He was wearing a tuxedo. He was carrying something heavy. Is that a brick? Gabriel asked. It's a landscaping stone, I said. From my front flower bed. Caleb had hopped the fence. He was coming for the house. It was 2:15 a.m. The darkness outside was absolute, broken only by the motion sensor lights flickering on as Caleb stumbled through my garden. Call 911, I told Gabriel. Now. Gabriel was already dialing. Dispatch, we have an intruder at 450 Lakeview Drive. The homeowner is inside. The intruder is hostile. I watched on the monitor as Caleb approached the French doors of the sunroom. He looked deranged. His bow tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned, his face streaked with sweat and dirt. He wasn't the smug brother from the reception anymore. He was a cornered animal. He pressed his face against the glass, peering into the dark house. "Mason!" he screamed. The sound was muffled by the double-paned glass, but I could hear the rage. "I know you're in there. Open up. It's my house." I stood in the hallway well away from the glass. I didn't engage. I just watched. "Don't do it, Caleb," I whispered to myself. "Don't throw your life away." He raised the landscaping stone above his head. Crash. The sound of shattering glass was explosive. The security alarm screamed instantly. A piercing, high-pitched wail that disoriented the senses. Caleb reached through the broken pane and unlocked the handle. He pushed the door open and stepped onto the shattered glass. He was inside. "I'm moving in," he yelled over the alarm, swinging the stone around like a weapon. "Where are you, you little rat?" I stayed upstairs, watching the internal feed on my phone. "Police are 3 minutes out," Gabriel said, his voice calm but urgent. "Stay here. Do not engage. Let the cops handle him." Caleb was trashing the living room. He swept my collection of vintage vinyl records off the shelf. He kicked over a vase. It was a tantrum of pure destruction. Then he stopped. He pulled a folded document out of his tuxedo jacket pocket. He slammed it onto the coffee table. "I have the papers," he shouted at the empty room. "Mom signed them. It's legal." Sirens. Blue and red lights washed over the walls of the living room, flashing through the broken door. "Police! Show me your hands." 2 officers stormed in through the broken sunroom door, guns drawn. Caleb froze. He looked at the cops, then at the rock in his hand, then at the papers on the table. "Wait! It's my house!" Caleb yelled, dropping the rock. "I have the deed. Look! On the ground. Now!" The officer didn't care about the deed. He cared about the breaking and entering. I watched my brother, the golden child, the wedding prince, get tackled onto my Persian rug. They cuffed his hands behind his back. He was screaming for Mom. "Get him up," the sergeant said. I walked down the stairs then. Gabriel followed me. The officer looked up. "Are you the homeowner?" "I am," I said. "Mason Rossi. This man claims he lives here," the officer said, gesturing to Caleb. "He does not," I said. "He is my brother. But he does not live here, and he was not invited." "Mason!" Caleb spat, his face pressed against the floor. Tell them about the gift." "There was no gift, Caleb," I said sadly. "Officer," Gabriel stepped forward, his lawyer voice in full effect, "we would like to draw your attention to the document the suspect placed on the table. He claims it proves ownership." The officer picked up the crumpled papers. He shone his flashlight on them. "It's a quitclaim deed," the officer read, "transferring property from Mason Rossi to Caleb Rossi." He looked at the signature at the bottom. "Is this your signature, sir?" the officer asked me. I looked at it. It was a shaky, pathetic attempt to copy my autograph. No, I said. That is a forgery. The room went quiet, save for the crackle of the police radio. Caleb, I asked, looking down at him. Where did you get this? Mom gave it to me. Caleb sobbed. She said she signed it for you. She said you were too busy to do the paperwork. She notarized it herself. My mother was a notary public. Gabriel let out a low whistle. Officer, this is now a fraud investigation. And forgery. On top of the B&E and vandalism. The officer nodded. Read him his rights. You have the right to remain silent. As they dragged Caleb out toward the cruiser, I saw another car pull up. It was my parents. They ran toward the house, but another officer stopped them at the tape. My baby, Mom screamed. Don't arrest him. It's a misunderstanding. I walked to the broken door. I looked at my parents. You forged my signature, Mom? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried in the night air. Mom stopped screaming. She looked at me, her eyes wide with terror. She realized, finally, that the game was over. It was for the family, she whispered. No, I said. It was a crime. This is the moment that changed everything, when I watched my brother get handcuffed in his tuxedo and finally took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient with me this far. You are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting 1 below, so I know you've stuck with me. It not only helps more people find this story, but lets me know my experience means something to you. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to share the rest of this journey. The sun was coming up by the time I left the police station. The sky was a bruised purple, matching the color of the bags under my eyes. I had spent the last 4 hours giving statements. Gabriel had been a shark, ensuring every charge was documented. Burglary, criminal trespassing, criminal mischief, and the big one, forgery and attempted fraud. I walked out to the parking lot. My parents were sitting on a bench near the entrance. They looked aged 10 years in one night. Mom's makeup was smeared. Dad's tuxedo was rumpled. They stood up when they saw me. Mason, Dad croaked. Please, you have to drop the charges. They're setting bail at $50,000. We don't have it. Then he stays in jail, I said, not breaking stride. He's your brother. Mom wailed, grabbing my arm. Pulled away. He was supposed to be on a plane to Hawaii this morning. It's his honeymoon. Where is Layla? I asked. She took an Uber to her parents' house, Dad said, looking at his shoes. She took the wedding gifts with her. Smart girl, I said. She realized the check bounced. Mason, listen, Dad pleaded. We made a mistake. The forgery. We didn't mean to use it legally. It was just to show Layla, just to calm her down until you came around. Until I came around? I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. You thought if you forged my signature, I would just agree to it? You thought you could commit a felony and I would just nod. We thought you loved your family, Mom screamed. We thought you weren't a selfish, cold-hearted miser. I am selfish, I said. I am selfish enough to want to keep the house I paid for. I am selfish enough to not want my signature forged by my own mother. I looked at them, really looked at them. I didn't see parents anymore. I saw leeches. I saw 2 people who had drained me emotionally for decades and were now trying to drain me financially. I'm not dropping the charges, I said. And Mom? I'm reporting you to the state notary board. You'll lose your license. Mom gasped. You wouldn't. That's my job. You used your stamp to steal my house, I said. You're done. I got into my car. Gabriel was in the passenger seat. That was brutal, he said. That was necessary, I replied. Layla just posted again, Gabriel said, checking his phone. She deleted the video crying about you. Now she's posted a status. Lies and deceit. Returning all gifts. Marriage annulment pending. Fastest divorce in history, I said. Didn't even last 24 hours. Caleb is going to wake up in a cell, single, homeless, and facing 5 to 10 years, Gabriel said. Are you okay with that? I looked out the window. I saw my parents arguing on the sidewalk. blaming each other. I thought about the hole in my sunroom. I thought about the years of being the second-best son. I didn't put him in that cell, Gabe, I said. He broke into my house. He carried the forged papers. He chose this. Fair enough, Gabriel said. What now? Now, I said, starting the engine. I go home. I call the glass repair guy. And I finally get some sleep. But I knew I wouldn't sleep. Not yet. Because the legal battle was just starting. My parents were cornered. And they had one card left to play. The family guilt card. And they would play it hard. As I drove away, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sarah, the family matriarch. The one person Dad feared. Mason, she said, her voice like cracking ice. What is this I hear about you arresting your brother? Here we go. The flying monkeys were being deployed. Aunt Sarah, I said, you might want to sit down. I have a story to tell you. The phone in my hand felt like a live grenade. Aunt Sarah, the matriarch. In our family, God might forgive your sins. But Aunt Sarah remembered them forever. She was my father's older sister, a woman who controlled the family narrative from her pristine living room in Connecticut. If Dad was the loud bark, Aunt Sarah was the bite. Aunt Sarah, I said, putting the car in park just down the street from the police station. I needed to focus. Gabriel watched me from the passenger seat, his expression unreadable. Mason, her voice was razor sharp. I just got off the phone with your mother. She is hysterical. She says you have put your brother in a cage like an animal. She says you are pressing charges because of a misunderstanding about a set of keys. Tell me I am hearing lies, Mason. Tell me you did not have your brother arrested on his wedding night. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The narrative was being spun, and if I didn't cut the thread now, I would be the villain forever. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Sarah, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. And it wasn't about keys. Then what is it? She snapped. Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are punishing them for loving him more. We all know it, Mason. We know you've always been jealous of Caleb. But this? Ruining his life? It is cruel. Jealous. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. Sarah, do you know why Caleb is in a cell right now? Because he entered your home to retrieve his wedding gifts. No, I said. He is in a cell because he threw a landscaping rock through my glass patio door. He is in a cell because he destroyed my living room. But the real reason he is not getting out, the reason bail is set at $50,000, is because he was caught holding a forged deed. Silence on the other end. Just the static of the line. What did you say? Her voice dropped an octave. A forged deed, Sarah, I repeated, articulating every syllable. Mom used her notary stamp. She forged my signature on a quitclaim deed transferring my property to Caleb. She committed a felony. Caleb tried to use a fraudulent federal document to seize my assets. That isn't a family squabble. That is grand larceny and fraud. The police have the document. It is evidence. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. I knew what she was doing. She was processing. Sarah was a rigid woman, but she was a law-abiding one. She respected order. She respected rules. Susan forged a signature? She whispered. With her notary seal? Yes. And Robert? Did he know? He handed Caleb the keys, I said. He knew. I heard a heavy sigh on the other end, the sound of a judge passing a sentence. I see, she said. The warmth, what little there was, vanished from her voice, replaced by a cold, steel resolve. That is foolish, incredibly foolish. I'm not dropping the charges, Sarah, I said. So if you called to guilt me, save your breath. I called, she said, choosing her words carefully, to tell you to fix this. But if they forged legal documents, then they have broken the covenant of this family. We do not steal. We do not lie on paper. She paused. I will not be contributing to their bail fund. Good night, Mason. The line went dead. I looked at Gabriel. She's out. She's not helping them. Gabriel nodded slowly. You just cut off their supply line. Aunt Sarah was their only hope for that 50 grand. I put the car in gear. Good. Let them feel the weight of their choices. The next few weeks were a blur of legal motions and quiet devastation. I didn't go back to the lake house immediately. Couldn't. I stayed at a hotel in the city, close to my office. I threw myself into work, closing 2 major commercial real estate deals in 10 days, driven by a manic need to prove that my success was mine, that I was untouchable. But Gabriel kept me updated. The fallout was nuclear. Mom's notary license was suspended immediately pending investigation. That was her job. She worked at a title company. She was fired 3 days after the arrest. The shame of it. A woman who prided herself on her reputation, fired for fraud, broke her. Gabriel told me she wouldn't leave her house. She sat in the dark with the blinds drawn, refusing to answer the door. Dad was in worse shape. The financial autopsy of my parents' life was gruesome. During the discovery phase of the civil suit I filed for damages, we got access to their financials. It was worse than I thought. They weren't just broke. They were underwater. They had taken out a second mortgage on their condo to pay for Caleb's crypto investment 2 years ago. Money that vanished into thin air. They had maxed out 4 credit cards to pay for the wedding venue deposits I hadn't covered. They had banked everything on me giving up the house. They needed Caleb to have that asset so they could borrow against it. They planned to have Caleb take out a home equity loan on my house the moment the deed was transferred, using that money to pay off their debts. They weren't just giving him a home, Gabriel explained one evening over takeout in my hotel room. They were laundering their debt through his inheritance of your property. It was a Ponzi scheme, Mason, and you were the investor they were planning to defraud. I stared at the spreadsheet. The numbers were red, ugly, and undeniable. They were going to leverage the house? I asked, feeling sick. I spent 5 years restoring that place. And they were going to mortgage it to pay for credit card bills. They were going to bleed it dry, Gabriel said. And when Caleb inevitably defaulted on the payments, the bank would have foreclosed. You would have lost the house anyway. They would have destroyed your masterpiece just to buy themselves another year of pretending to be rich. That was the moment the last ember of guilt died in my chest. I wasn't punishing them. I had survived them. Caleb didn't make bail. He spent 3 weeks in county jail before his public defender worked out a plea deal. Layla never visited him. Not once. She sent a lawyer to serve him annulment papers while he was in holding. She cited fraud as the reason. She walked away clean, keeping the engagement ring I'm sure she sold the next day. The sentencing hearing was set for August. I decided to go. I needed to see it finished. But before that, I had to deal with the house. I drove up to the lake on a Tuesday. The Titan security guards were gone. But the new high-tech gate system I installed opened with a silent hum. The house looked the same from the outside. Majestic. Serene. But as I walked through the front door, the smell hit me. Stale beer. The metallic tang of fear. And the underlying scent of violation. The living room was exactly as the police had left it. The police tape had been removed, but the chaos remained. The shattered glass from the French door crunched under my boots. My vintage vinyl collection lay in a heap, scratched and ruined. The Persian rug, a gift to myself when I closed my first $1 million deal, was stained with mud and what looked like wine. I walked through the rooms. I remembered sanding these floors. I remembered painting these walls. I remembered sitting on this porch, thinking I had finally built a fortress where I was safe. But I wasn't safe here. Not anymore. The memory of Caleb screaming, the image of my father handing over the keys, it was burned into the drywall. This wasn't a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. I called my realtor, Sarah. Mason? She answered on the first ring. List it, I said. The lake house. She sounded shocked. Mason, that's your baby. You put so much love into that place. It's just a house, Sarah. I lied. List it. Full market value. I want it gone by the end of the month. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm buying a new plot of land. North side. Gated community. Something with better security. Okay, she said softly. I'll have the paperwork ready. Selling the house felt like cutting off a limb that had turned gangrenous. It hurt, but it was necessary for survival. I couldn't live in the ruins of their betrayal. I spent the next week supervising the repairs. I hired a crew to replace the glass, clean the carpets, and stage the furniture. I didn't lift a finger myself. I didn't want to sweat for this house anymore. I treated it like a business asset. Cold. Detached. The house sold in 4 days. A cash offer from a tech CEO from California. He didn't care about the family drama. He just saw the view. I signed the closing papers at Gabriel's office. When I handed over the keys, the real keys, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying for 30 years. "You okay?" a soft voice asked. I looked up. It was Emily, Gabriel's senior paralegal. I had spent a lot of time with her over the last month. She was the one who organized the evidence, who screened my calls, who brought me coffee when I was staring blankly at legal documents. She was sharp, funny, and fiercely protective of the truth. "I'm lighter," I said, smiling at her. "Definitely lighter." "You have a meeting with the DA in an hour," she reminded me. "And then, maybe dinner? Not legal dinner. Just dinner." I looked at her, really looked at her. She didn't see a walking wallet. She didn't see a scapegoat. She saw a man who had just fought a war and won. "Dinner sounds perfect," I said. The day of the sentencing arrived with a heavy gray sky. The courtroom was cold. I sat in the back row. I didn't want to be near them. My parents were there. They looked like ghosts. Dad had lost 20 pounds. His suit hung off him. Mom was trembling, clutching a tissue. They had lost their condo. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings the week prior. They were currently living in a rented one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, paid for by selling their furniture and Dad's watch collection. Caleb was brought in. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His hair was shaved. He looked small. The bravado, the arrogance, it was all gone. He looked around the room, scanning for Layla. When he realized she wasn't there, his shoulders slumped. Then he saw me. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Caleb. The anger, the entitlement, but it died quickly, replaced by fear. The judge was a stern woman who had clearly read the file thoroughly. "Mr. Rossi," she addressed Caleb, "you stand before this court convicted of felony burglary and attempted fraud. You broke into a home that did not belong to you, armed with a weapon, and attempted to claim ownership using a forged instrument." I didn't mean to hurt anyone," Caleb stammered. "My mother. She told me it was okay." "You are 38 years old, sir." The judge cut him off. "You are not a child. You do not hide behind your mother's skirt. You made a choice to violate the law and your brother's trust." The sentence was handed down. 18 months in state prison, suspended to 5 years of strict probation, 400 hours of community service, and restitution of $23,000 for the damages to my home and legal fees. It was a mercy. He wasn't going to prison, but he was a felon. His record was marked forever. He would never work in finance or sales again. He was tethered to the system. But the judge wasn't done. She turned her eyes to the gallery, finding my parents. "And let the record show," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "that while Mrs. Susan Rossi is not on trial today, her actions in facilitating this crime are reprehensible. I am forwarding a recommendation to the district attorney's office to pursue separate charges for notary fraud." Mom let out a small whimper. Dad put his head in his hands. It was over. I walked out of the courtroom before the bailiff even unclicked Caleb's cuffs. I didn't want to hear their apologies. I didn't want to hear their begging. "Mason!" I stopped near the exit. It was Dad. He had run after me, out of breath. "Mason, please," he panted. "We have nothing. We lost the condo. Your mother is going to be charged. Caleb can't find work with a felony record. We need help. Just a loan. Until we get back on our feet." I turned slowly. I looked at this man who had raised me. I looked for love. I looked for regret. All I saw was calculation. He was still trying to solve the math problem of his life using my bank account. "You have 2 kidneys, Dad," I said. "Sell one." His mouth dropped open. "What? You wanted a solution," I said, putting my sunglasses on. "That's a solution, because you are never seeing another dime from me. Not for rent, not for food, not for a funeral. You're my son," he whispered. "No," I said. "I was your retirement plan, and I just quit." I walked away. I walked out into the gray afternoon, which was starting to break into sunlight. I found my car. I found Emily waiting for me in the passenger seat with 2 coffees and a smile. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Drive," I said. "Just drive." Part 8. Epilogue 1 year later. The tires of my new car, a matte black Aston Martin, because the rolls felt too much like the old me, hummed against the asphalt of the Pacific Coast Highway. The ocean was a vast, glittering expanse to my left. To my right, the hills rose up, green and wild. I wasn't driving to an office. I wasn't driving to a negotiation. I was driving home. My new home wasn't a mansion. It was a modern, glass and steel structure perched on a cliffside, overlooking the water. It was smaller than the Lakeview estate, but it was infinitely better. It had no history, no ghosts, no guest cottage for deadbeat brothers. I pulled into the driveway. The gate recognized my biometric tag and slid open silently. I walked inside. The house smelled like sandalwood and sea salt. Emily was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. She looked up and smiled. We had moved in together 3 months ago. It was easy. It was respectful. We split the bills not because I needed her to, but because she insisted. "I want to be your partner," she had said, "not your dependent." That sentence alone was more healing than 10 years of therapy. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. My phone buzzed on the granite surface. Unknown number. I knew who it was. I had blocked every number associated with my family, but they still tried, usually from payphones or burner apps. I let it ring. It stopped. Then, a voicemail notification popped up. I shouldn't have listened to it. Gabriel would have told me to delete it. But curiosity, that old scar that itches, made me press play. "Mason." "It's Caleb." His voice sounded rough. Older. Broken. Look, I'm working at a warehouse now. Loading trucks. It's hard work. My back is killing me. Dad had a stroke last week. It was mild, but the medical bills, Mason. They don't have insurance. Mom is working at a diner, but it's not enough. We're drowning here. I know we screwed up. I know, but are you really going to let us sink? We're your blood. Doesn't that mean anything? Just call me back. Please. The message ended. I looked out at the ocean. I thought about the blood argument. It's the last refuge of the abusive. When they have no loyalty, no respect, and no love to offer, they offer biology. They point to DNA as a binding contract that obligates you to suffer for them. I thought about Dad having a stroke. A pang of sadness hit me, sharp and sudden. But then I remembered the stress he had put me through. The years of manipulation. The way he looked at me in that courtroom. Not as a son, but as a failed transaction. If I sent money, would it help? No. It would just restart the cycle. They would take the money, and then they would hate me for having it. They would use it to dig a deeper hole. I deleted the voicemail. Then I blocked the number. "Everything okay?" Emily asked, watching me. "Yeah," I said, putting the phone down. "Just a spam call." She knew. She walked over and hugged me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. "You aren't responsible for their journey, Mason." "I know," I said. "I'm just grateful for mine." I walked out onto the deck. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and purple. People often ask me if I regret it. If I regret the public humiliation, the arrests, the destruction of my family unit. They ask if I'm lonely without parents to call on Christmas, without a brother to watch the game with. And I tell them the truth. I was lonely when I was with them. I was lonely at that wedding reception, surrounded by 200 people, knowing that the only person in the room who had my back was me. I was lonely in that big house, waiting for the next demand, the next guilt trip. Now, I have silence, but it's not empty. It's peaceful. I have friends who don't ask for loans. I have a partner who loves me without conditions. I have a business that thrives because I protect it. I learned the hard way that you can't save people who are determined to drown you to keep themselves afloat. My family didn't make a mistake. They made a choice. They chose entitlement over relationship. They chose greed over gratitude. And I made a choice too. I chose to be the villain in their story so I could be the hero in mine. I took a sip of water, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. The tide was coming in, relentless and powerful. It washed away the debris on the shore, leaving the sand clean and smooth. That's what I did. I washed it away. My house is mine. My life is mine. And for the first time in 37 years, my future belongs to no one but me. I turned back to the warmth of the kitchen, to the sound of laughter and the smell of dinner cooking. I closed the sliding glass door, shutting out the noise of the wind. I was finally home. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: no is a complete sentence. We are conditioned from birth to believe that family is a sacred bond that must be preserved at all costs. We are taught that blood is thicker than water. But the full original proverb is actually, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. This means the bonds you choose to make are stronger than the ones you are born into. My family relied on my compulsory sacrifice. They believed that because I had more, I owed them everything. They weaponized guilt to bypass my boundaries. But here is the truth. You do not owe your mental health, your financial security, or your dignity to anyone, even if you share a last name. Toxic behavior doesn't get a pass just because it comes from a parent or sibling. In fact, it should be held to a higher standard because these are the people who are supposed to protect you, not exploit you. Setting boundaries isn't an act of war. It's an act of self-respect. When I stopped enabling them, I didn't ruin their lives. I just forced them to face the consequences of their own actions. And in doing so, I saved myself. So, I have a question for you. Have you ever had to choose between being a good family member and being good to yourself? What was the moment you realized you had to draw the line? Tell me in the comments below. Or, if this story resonated with you and you agree that boundaries are essential, just comment good, so I know we are on the same page. I'm Mason, and thank you for listening to my story. Stay strong, stay boundaried, and never hand over the keys to your life.